The entire moon was dying around her. Rachel Torres felt the heat of plasma fire on her face as another explosion rocked the ground beneath her boots. Dust and debris filled the air so thick she could barely see 10 feet ahead. Her lungs burned with every breath, but she kept moving, kept dragging Private Danny Mitchell toward what was left of the evac zone. "Stay with me, Danny," she grunted, her muscles screaming in protest. The kid was twice her size, and the shrapnel in his leg meant he couldn't walk. Blood soaked through the tourniquet she'd applied 3 minutes ago. Maybe 4. Time didn't make sense anymore. The Alliance retreat had turned into a complete disaster. Command had underestimated the Krevdar forces by thousands. Now everyone was running, scrambling to get off this rock before the orbital bombardment started. Rachel had counted at least 30 bodies on her way to the landing zone. 30 soldiers she couldn't save because there simply wasn't time. She finally got Danny to the medic transport and handed him off to Corpsman Lisa Chen. "He's stable but needs surgery within the hour," Rachel said, wiping sweat from her forehead and leaving a streak of someone else's blood across her face. "Got it? You coming?" Lisa asked as another explosion lit up the darkening sky. Rachel was about to say yes when she heard it. A sound that made her freeze mid-step. It was low and mournful, almost like crying, but it wasn't human. It wasn't anything she'd ever heard before. "Torres, let's go," Sergeant Kevin Blake shouted from near the transport. But Rachel was already moving toward the sound. Her training screamed at her to ignore it, to get on that transport and get out. But something in that sound pulled at her, made her think of wounded animals she tried to save as a kid back in Texas. She found the source in what used to be a supply bunker, now just a pile of twisted metal and concrete. There, half buried in rubble, was a creature that made her breath catch in her throat. A Drakshari. Rachel had seen pictures in the Alliance briefings, heard the stories from soldiers who'd fought alongside them. Dragon-like aliens with crystal scales and wings that could slice through steel. The warrior race that everyone feared and respected in equal measure. But this one wasn't a fearsome warrior. It was small, maybe the size of a horse, and it was clearly dying. Its scales, which should have been glowing with inner light, were dull and gray. The creature's whole body shook with violent tremors, and its breathing sounded wet and labored. "Medic Torres, we're moving out." Sergeant Blake's voice was closer now, urgent. Rachel knelt beside the creature, her medic instincts taking over. She'd taken an oath. All life. That's what she'd sworn. The creature's eyes opened, and Rachel felt her heart clench. They were golden, bright even in the dim light, and they looked right into hers. Intelligent eyes. Scared eyes. The same look she'd seen on Danny's face just minutes ago. Protocol was crystal clear. Alien biology was unknown territory. Resources were critically low. Every bandage, every dose of medicine was needed for human soldiers. And besides, they had maybe 2 minutes before the transport left without her. But those eyes. Rachel's hands moved on autopilot, pulling out her medical scanner. The readings were all wrong, obviously, since the device was calibrated for humans. But she could see the patterns. Elevated temperature, way too high. Rapid, irregular pulse. The shivering wasn't from cold. This was fever, and a bad one. "Please," she whispered, not sure if the creature could even understand. She pulled out her trauma kit and found her emergency antibiotics. The heavy-duty ones, designed for severe bacterial infections in humans. Would they work on alien biology? Would they kill the creature faster? She had no idea. Rachel looked at the vial in her hand, then back at those golden eyes. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a whimper. It was suffering. Even if she couldn't save it, maybe she could ease its pain. "Torres? Now." Blake was right behind her now. "Screw it," Rachel muttered. Her hands were steady as she loaded the syringe, found what she hoped was a vein beneath those scales, and pushed the plunger. Then she grabbed the thermal emergency blankets from her kit, the fancy ones that reflected body heat, and wrapped them around the trembling creature as best she could. The creature's eyes closed slowly, and for a horrible moment Rachel thought she'd just killed it. Then she saw its breathing even out slightly, the violent shaking reducing to small tremors. Blake grabbed her arm. "Rachel, the transport's leaving." She took one last look at the small dragon, then ran. Her boots pounded against broken concrete as plasma fire lit up the sky behind her. She dove into the transport just as the ramp began closing, Blake pulling her the rest of the way in. As the ship lifted off, Rachel looked out the window at the ruined bunker below, getting smaller and smaller. She'd probably just wasted critical medical supplies on a creature that would die anyway. Command would have her head if they found out. But those eyes. She couldn't shake them. The transport shook from nearby explosions and Rachel closed her eyes, exhausted. She never expected to see that creature again. How could she? This moon would be glass in an hour, bombarded from orbit to deny it to the enemy. She'd done something stupid, probably pointless, definitely against protocol. But she'd done something. The field hospital was barely holding together. Rachel had been awake for 36 hours straight, her hands moving on autopilot as she stitched up another soldier. The morning sun was too bright, making her eyes hurt, but she couldn't stop. There were too many wounded and not enough of anything else. Not enough bandages. Not enough painkillers. Not enough beds. Private Amy Wilson was her current patient, a piece of shrapnel lodged dangerously close to her spine. Rachel's fingers worked carefully, steadily, even though her whole body wanted to collapse. She'd learned a long time ago how to push through exhaustion. Coffee helped. So did the knowledge that if she stopped, people died. "How's it looking, Doc?" Amy asked weakly. Everyone called Rachel Doc, even though she was a combat medic, not a doctor. "You're going to be fine," Rachel said, and she meant it. Another few millimeters and this would have been a different conversation. "Just hold still for me." That's when Private Jeff Martinez burst into the tent, his face white as a sheet. "Contact. We've got contact." Rachel's heart sank. Not again. They'd just barely survived the last attack. The base defenses were shot, and most of their heavy weapons had been destroyed or abandoned during the retreat. If the Krevdar were coming back. But then she heard it. Not gunfire. Screaming. Pure terror in those voices. She ran outside, still holding her surgical tools, and froze. The sky had gone dark. Not from clouds or smoke, but from something massive blocking out the sun. A Drakshari warrior was descending from above, and it was enormous. The pictures in the briefings hadn't done them justice. This creature was at least 30 feet long from nose to tail, with wings that stretched even wider. Its scales caught the sunlight like thousands of diamonds, creating rainbow reflections that danced across the ground. Each scale looked thick as armor plating, and its claws were the size of combat knives. Soldiers were already firing. Rachel heard the rapid crack of assault rifles, the deeper boom of a mounted gun. Bullets hit the dragon's hide and bounced off like rain on concrete. The creature didn't even flinch. It didn't roar or breathe fire like in the stories. It just kept coming down, slow and deliberate, like nothing they did mattered at all. "Cease fire. Cease fire," someone was shouting, but the shooting continued. Panic did that to people. The dragon landed right in front of Rachel's medical tent. The ground shook from the impact and Rachel stumbled backward. This close, the creature was even more terrifying. She could see every scale, every razor-sharp edge on its claws, the heat shimmer coming off its body. Then it did something Rachel never expected. Gently, moving with the kind of careful precision you'd use with a newborn baby, the massive dragon lowered something from its back. It was the small dragon. The one Rachel had tried to save yesterday on that dying moon. The one she thought was dead for sure. But it wasn't dead. It was awake. Its scales glowed with soft blue light, healthy and vibrant. The little dragon chirped when it saw Rachel, a sound almost like a happy bird. It half walked, half stumbled toward her on unsteady legs. Rachel dropped her surgical tools. Her brain couldn't process what was happening. That moon was supposed to be destroyed. Orbital bombardment. Nothing should have survived. The massive dragon's head lowered until its eye, easily the size of Rachel's whole head, was level with her face. A device attached to its neck crackled to life and a voice came through. Deep and resonant, speaking perfect English. "I am Warlord K. Thermal of the Drakshari fleets," the dragon said. Each word felt like it had weight to it. "You saved my child." Rachel's mouth opened but no words came out. Around her, soldiers had stopped shooting, everyone frozen in shock. I just... Rachel finally managed. "I just did what any medic would do." "No." The word was firm, absolute. K. Thermal's head tilted slightly, studying her with an intensity that made Rachel feel naked. "Your own scientists, your Alliance researchers, they told us Drakshari are cold-blooded creatures. They were wrong. They were very wrong." The small dragon, the child, Rachel's mind corrected, pressed against her leg. It was warm, almost hot to the touch through her uniform pants. "Our young undergo metamorphosis," K. Thermal continued. "Their bodies must maintain precise temperature as they transition from hatchling to juvenile. Too cold and their organs fail. Your people never knew because adult Drakshari regulate heat perfectly. But our children cannot. Not yet." Rachel looked down at the small dragon nuzzling against her. Those golden eyes looked up at her with what could only be described as affection. The moon was bombarded, K-Thermal said. I returned for Ash Carey believing I would find only ash and regret. Instead, I found my child alive, wrapped in your human thermal technology, your medicine keeping infection from claiming what the cold could not. Without your intervention, Ash Carey would have died within hours. The fever would have destroyed vital organs. I didn't know, Rachel whispered. I couldn't leave. You could have, K-Thermal interrupted. Your soldiers did. Your protocols demanded it. Your own survival required it. But you did not. You stayed. You used your limited resources. You gave medicine meant for your own kind to a creature you did not understand. Colonel Mike Stevens pushed through the crowd of soldiers. He looked like he was trying to decide whether to salute, run, or faint. Sir, ma'am, you're, Warlord, we appreciate the visit, but this is a military installation and I declare life debt, K-Thermal said, and somehow those 4 words silenced everyone. In my culture this is sacred above all things. You are Scale Sister now, Rachel Torres. Where you walk I follow. Where you stand I stand. This is not negotiation. This is reality. The small dragon, Ash Carey, chirped again and pressed harder against Rachel's leg. Stevens went pale. Ma'am, with all due respect, this complicates the entire tactical situation. We have protocols, chain of command, diplomatic considerations. K-Thermal's eyes fixed on the colonel, and Stevens actually took a step backward. I do not ask your permission, human commander. I state what is. Challenge this, and you challenge the honor of all Drakshari. Your entire alliance would burn before we would allow such insult. Rachel stood there, a small dragon pressed against her leg, a massive warrior dragon looming above her, and realized her life had just gotten incredibly complicated. Rachel's life had become something out of a fever dream. For 3 straight days, she'd had a 30-foot dragon warrior watching her every move. K-Thermal would perch on top of the medical building like some kind of scaly gargoyle, those massive eyes tracking her wherever she went. And Ash Carey? The young dragon followed her like a lost puppy, chirping whenever Rachel moved more than 10 feet away. The other medics thought it was hilarious. Corpsman Tyler Hayes had started calling her the Dragon Whisperer, and the name stuck. Rachel wasn't laughing. It was hard to concentrate on surgery when you knew a creature that could level buildings was watching your every move. She was working on a Krevdar prisoner when K-Thermal's shadow fell across the tent. Rachel didn't even look up. She'd gotten used to it. The prisoner, however, started thrashing against his restraints, eyes wide with terror. Stay still, Rachel said firmly, holding the raider's arm steady. I'm trying to help you. You heal them? K-Thermal's voice rumbled through the translator. The dragon's massive head had appeared in the tent entrance, which really wasn't designed for creatures that size. Your enemies? Rachel continued cleaning the wound on the prisoner's arm. It was infected badly, probably from shrapnel that hadn't been treated properly. They're wounded, she said, threading a needle. That makes them patients. She felt K-Thermal's confusion without even looking. The dragon had been silent for a long moment, processing. This one tried to kill your soldiers yesterday. I saw the battle recordings. This warrior killed 3 of your people. I know. Rachel started stitching. The prisoner had stopped struggling, watching her with wide, uncertain eyes. Doesn't change the fact that he's got an infection that'll kill him if I don't treat it. In my culture, K-Thermal said slowly, this would be shameful. To show mercy to defeated enemies dishonors both warrior and victim. They should die with honor or live with the disgrace of defeat. There is no this. The dragon gestured with one massive claw toward Rachel's work. Rachel finished the stitches and started bandaging. Well, we're not Drakshari. We do things differently. Why? It was the simplest question, but Rachel heard genuine confusion in it. She finally looked up at the warlord. Because every life matters. Not just the ones on our side. This soldier right here, he's probably got family somewhere. Maybe kids. Maybe parents waiting for him to come home. Yeah, he's the enemy. Yeah, he's killed our people. But he's still a living being who's hurting. The prisoner was staring at her now, really staring like he'd never seen anything like her before. Rachel continued, human medicine isn't just about healing wounds. It's about preventing suffering. Fighting disease. Preserving life at all costs. We took an oath. All of us who wear this symbol. She tapped the red cross on her uniform. We swore to help anyone who needs it. Doesn't matter what side they're on. K-Thermal's head tilted. That gesture Rachel was learning meant deep thought. Your species is soft, the dragon said, but there was no insult in the tone. Just observation. Weak bodies compared to most species. Fragile bones. No natural weapons. No armor. Yet you conquered the stars. You defeated races twice your size, 3 times your strength. How? Rachel packed up her medical kit and washed her hands. Ashcary had been sitting quietly in the corner, those golden eyes watching everything. The young dragon chirped softly. Because we refuse to leave anyone behind, Rachel answered, drying her hands. Our strength isn't in our bodies, K-Thermal. It's in this. She tapped her temple. We think. We plan. We use tools. And it's in this. She placed her hand over her heart. We care. We protect each other. We turn enemies into friends. We don't win through strength. We win by making strength less important than cooperation. Ashcary chirped again, louder this time, and moved closer to Rachel. The young dragon pressed its head against her leg, and Rachel could have sworn it understood every word. That evening everything changed. Lieutenant Bobby Martinez burst into the medical tent where Rachel was checking on her patients. His face was grim. Intel just came through, he said. Krevdar main force is heading our way. We're talking thousands of them with heavy armor support. Colonel Stevens called an emergency meeting. The command tent was crowded with officers, all looking exhausted and worried. K-Thermal had to stay outside because there was simply no room for a dragon that size. Our defensive perimeter won't hold, Stevens said bluntly. We're evacuating in 2 hours. Everyone who can walk starts moving now. We'll carry who we can. Rachel stood up. What about the critical patients? We've got 30 soldiers who can't be moved without killing them. Stevens looked at her and Rachel saw the pain in his eyes. We'll do what we can, Torres. But we can't save everyone. So we're just leaving them to die? Rachel's voice was louder than she intended. We're saving who we can save, Stevens shot back. That's war, Medic Torres. Sometimes there are no good choices. Rachel shook her head. No. These patients can't be moved. Their injuries are too severe. Moving them means they die for sure. And staying means you die for sure, Stevens said quietly. The Krevdar don't take prisoners, Rachel. You know that. They're coming here specifically to wipe out this hospital. To kill the wounded so we can't recover our forces. Then I'm staying. The tent went silent. Every officer was staring at her. Torres, that's not a request, Stevens said. That's an order. You're evacuating. With respect, sir, no. Rachel met his eyes. I took an oath. These soldiers trusted us to protect them. I'm not leaving them to die alone. Before Stevens could respond, a growl shook the entire tent. Not loud but deep, the kind of sound you felt in your bones. K-Thermal's massive head appeared in the tent entrance. The Scale Sister stays, the dragon's voice rumbled. So I stay. Let them come. Stevens looked between Rachel and the warlord. Then he closed his eyes and let out a long breath. You're both insane, he said. But I can't stop either of you, can I? Rachel smiled grimly. No, sir. You really can't. The first explosion came just as the sun broke over the horizon. Rachel was in the middle of changing in 4-line when the ground shook and all the lights went out. For one heartbeat, everything was silent. Then the screaming started. They're here. East perimeter, someone shouted. Rachel's hands moved automatically, securing the 4 and checking her patient was stable. Through the tent walls she could hear weapons fire. Lots of it. The distinctive crack of human rifles mixed with the deeper, heavier sounds of Krevdar plasma weapons. Then she heard something else. A roar that made her chest vibrate. K-Thermal had entered the fight. Rachel ran outside and saw something she'd never forget. The warlord was airborne, wings spread wide enough to cover half the base. When those wings beat downward, the force was like a hurricane. Enemy soldiers were literally blown off their feet, tumbling backward like toys. K-Thermal dove, and Rachel watched those claws she'd thought looked like knives tear through enemy armor like it was paper. Each swipe dropped 2 or 3 soldiers. When the dragon's mouth opened, fire poured out. Not regular fire. This was white-hot, the kind of heat that turned metal into liquid. An enemy vehicle melted under that breath, its crew barely escaping before the whole thing became slag. Holy Mother of... Lieutenant Martinez breathed beside Rachel. That's what they can do. Apparently, Rachel muttered. She'd known Drakshari were dangerous. Everyone knew. But seeing it was completely different. The eastern perimeter was where the fighting was worst. K-Thermal held that entire section alone, facing hundreds of enemy soldiers. The dragon moved like violence made flesh, every motion deadly, every strike precise. But even watching this display of raw power, Rachel could see the problem. There were too many of them. For every enemy K-Thermal dropped, 3 more appeared. The warlord was getting tired. The movements were still deadly but slightly slower. The fire breath came in shorter bursts. Even legends have limits. Taurus, we need you. Nurse Kelly Davis was pulling her arm. We've got wounded coming in fast. Rachel ran back to the medical tent. For the next hour, her world narrowed to blood, bandages, and trying to save lives faster than the battle could take them. Her hands never stopped moving. Stitch this wound. Stop that bleeding. Keep this soldier breathing just one more minute. Corpsman Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. I've got a wounded enemy fighter 50 meters past the barrier. He's surrendering, but I can't get to him. Too much crossfire. Rachel looked up from her current patient. Jake was good people. Young, maybe 23, with a wife back home and a baby he'd never met yet. Jake, leave him, Lieutenant Martinez ordered over the channel. Too dangerous. He's wounded, sir. He dropped his weapon. Rachel knew that tone. Jake wasn't going to leave. She trained him herself, and apparently she trained him too well. She grabbed a rifle from a nearby rack and ran before her brain could talk her out of it. The battlefield was chaos. Smoke everywhere, making it hard to see or breathe. Rachel kept low, using cover, moving toward where Jake's position marker showed on her tactical display. She found him pinned down behind a destroyed vehicle, the wounded Krevdar soldier lying in the open about 20 feet away. Jake, covering fire on 3. Rachel shouted. She didn't wait for 3. Rachel burst from cover, firing short controlled bursts toward enemy positions. Not trying to hit anyone, just make them keep their heads down. She grabbed the wounded soldier by his armor straps and started dragging. That's when she felt the impact. No pain at first, just a weird pressure in her left side. Then the burning started. Shrapnel. She'd been hit. Rachel kept pulling, got the wounded soldier to cover. Jake was there, grabbing her, trying to stop the bleeding. The Krevdar soldier she just saved was staring at her with wide eyes. Rachel, no. K-Thermal's roar sounded across the battlefield. The dragon was trying to reach her, fighting through enemy lines. The wounded soldier moved. For a horrible second, Rachel thought he was attacking. But then he grabbed her weapon, checked it, and turned toward his own people. Please, he said in broken, heavily accented English. Help me help you. Then this enemy soldier, this Krevdar raider who'd been trying to kill them all 5 minutes ago, started firing on his own squad. Providing covering fire while Jake dragged Rachel back toward the hospital. More explosions. More gunfire. Rachel's vision was getting fuzzy around the edges. She was aware of Jake shouting for a medic, which would have been funny if she wasn't bleeding out. She was the medic. Through the smoke and chaos, Rachel saw something impossible. Other Krevdar soldiers were lowering their weapons. Some were surrendering, hands raised. Others were actually turning their guns on their own squads, defending the hospital. K-Thermal landed beside her with enough force to crack the concrete. The dragon's massive head lowered, those golden eyes filled with something that looked like fear. The enemies, K-Thermal said, voice filled with awe. They fight for you now. They protect you. Rachel tried to speak, but her mouth wasn't working right. More Krevdar were surrendering, walking toward the hospital with hands up. Some were even helping carry wounded humans to safety. Humans, K-Thermal whispered, and Rachel had never heard such wonder in the dragon's voice. You do not win through strength. You win by making strength irrelevant. You turn hatred into loyalty with simple mercy. The sky filled with the sound of engines. Reinforcements. Alliance dropships coming in hot, attracted by the massive fight. Rachel felt herself being lifted. Someone was doing chest compressions. Kelly's voice, sounding far away, calling for blood transfusions. Ashkari was making distressed chirping sounds nearby. She looked up and saw K-Thermal's scales were covered in blood. Some of it was enemy blood. Some was from humans the dragon had tried to protect. And some of it was hers. Then everything went black. Waking up felt like swimming through mud. Rachel's eyelids were heavy, her mouth was dry, and everything hurt. Not sharp pain, just a dull ache that covered her entire body. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Easy. A familiar rumbling voice. You sustained significant damage. Rachel's eyes finally focused. The first thing she saw was scales. Massive crystalline scales that reflected the medical bay's lights in rainbow patterns. K-Thermal was right there, the dragon's enormous head resting on the floor beside her hospital bed. How long? Rachel's voice came out as a croak. 3 days, K-Thermal answered. Your medical staff said you died twice during surgery. They brought you back both times. Rachel tried to process that. She died. Twice. That explained why everything felt wrong. A weight shifted at her feet. Ashcary was curled up there, the young dragon apparently asleep. Except now those golden eyes opened and the dragon chirped happily, careful not to move too much and jostle the bed. Has he been there the whole time? Rachel asked. We both have. K. Thermal lifted his head slightly. Your fellow medics attempted to remove us. Multiple times. They were unsuccessful. Rachel could imagine that scene. Nurses trying to shoo away a 30-foot dragon. Despite the pain, she smiled. You scared them, didn't you? I stated facts. If Scale Sister dies, I would have failed my oath. Therefore, I would remain until certainty was achieved. The dragon paused. Also, your nurse Kelly has been teaching Ashcary human anatomy. My child now knows more about your species' internal organs than most of your soldiers. Rachel laughed, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through her side. Of course Kelly did. She looked around the medical bay. It was different from before. Cleaner. More organized. And through the window she could see construction crews working on new buildings. What happened after I passed out? She asked. Victory, K. Thermal said simply. The Krevdar forces you showed mercy to, they turned the battle. 17 enemy soldiers defended this hospital alongside us. They convinced 43 more to surrender. Your reinforcements arrived to find enemies and allies fighting together to protect wounded. Rachel closed her eyes, letting that sink in. The prisoners? Requesting asylum with the Alliance. All of them. They say they will not return to a cause that orders them to kill healers. K. Thermal's voice held something Rachel had never heard before. Respect. Deep, genuine respect. You almost died, Rachel Torres? Occupational hazard, Rachel said, trying to sound casual. Comes with the job. The warlord stood to full height, towering over her bed. Those massive golden eyes stared down at her with an intensity that made Rachel feel small. I came to your species believing Drakshari were the greatest warriors in the galaxy, K. Thermal said slowly. I was wrong. We're not warriors, Rachel protested weakly. We're medics. We save lives, we don't. You are the greatest warriors, K. Thermal interrupted, and his voice carried absolute conviction. Because you fight death itself and you refuse to surrender. Even when death would be easier. Even when your own protocols say to abandon the fight. You stand against the universe's most certain law and say, no, not today. The dragon reached up with one massive claw and, with surprising gentleness, pulled a single scale from his own chest. Rachel knew enough about Drakshari culture now to know what that meant. Those scales didn't come off easily. This was deliberate. Painful. This is the highest honor my people can give, K. Thermal said, placing the scale in Rachel's hand. It was warm, almost hot, and surprisingly light. I take your medical knowledge to the Conclave. The ruling council of all Drakshari. We will learn the human way. No more honorable death. Now we choose honorable life. Rachel felt tears starting. She reached up and unpinned her medic patch from her uniform, hanging on a chair nearby. The Red Cross symbol that meant everything to her. Then she pulled out her personal data drive from her pocket, the one that had survived somehow. Here, she said, holding them out. Everything we know. Every medical procedure, every treatment, every technique we've learned in hundreds of years. Save lives with it. That's all I ask. K. Thermal took them with the same gentleness he'd shown placing Ashcary at her feet days ago. Ashcary chirped and stood up on the bed, careful of Rachel's injuries. The young dragon's voice came through a smaller translator device someone had made. I come back. Learn more. Be warrior healer like Rachel. Help my people understand. Rachel reached out and scratched under Ashcary's chin. The dragon made a happy rumbling sound. You'll be amazing at it, she said softly. The next 6 months were a blur of recovery and paperwork. Rachel went back to regular duty, though Colonel Stevens tried to get her to take a desk job. She refused. Medics belonged in the field. Then one morning a message arrived. Video file, priority flagged, marked with Drakshari military codes. Rachel opened it in her quarters. The screen showed Ashcary but different now. Bigger, almost adolescent size. The young dragon wore modified armor painted with Red Cross symbols. And behind Ashcary, Rachel saw hundreds of other Drakshari, all wearing similar armor, all in what looked like medical training. Scale Sister, Ashcary's voice was clearer now, more confident. You saved one life. That life saved a civilization. The Conclave has authorized creation of the first Drakshari Medical Corps. We are 3,000 strong now and growing. We study your techniques. We learn your oath. We understand now what humans understood long ago, that preserving life requires greater courage than taking it. The camera panned, showing massive dragon-sized medical facilities, Drakshari practicing surgery on training dummies, young dragons learning about anatomy and medicine. This is the human way, Ashkari continued. To see suffering and refuse to accept it. To face death and fight it with everything we have. You taught us that strength is not measured in victories but in lives saved. In mercy shown. In choosing compassion when cruelty would be easier. Rachel watched the video 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She thought back to that moment on the dying moon. The small dragon shivering and scared. Her decision to use her medicine, break protocols, risk everything for a creature she didn't even know. One act of compassion. One moment of refusing to look away from suffering, even when every logical reason said she should. That's all it took to change an entire civilization. To turn a warrior race into healers. To prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in weapons or tactics, but in the simple, stubborn refusal to let others suffer when they could help. Rachel smiled through her tears and whispered to the empty room, "This is the human way." And somewhere across the galaxy, thousands of dragons were learning that lesson too.